health care and betraying a promise. It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste, fraud, and abuse on any programs. Now, those amateurs that are advising him, not Dr. Oz, I'm talking about White House healthcare experts, refuse to tell him that those instructions that were to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse all of a sudden eliminates a government program that's called the provider tax. We have morphed a legal construct that admittedly has been abused and should be eliminated into waste, fraud.
Want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Why this beat so cold?
We will make America proud again. And you try to we will make America wealthy again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
The big, beautiful bill. Some say the big, ugly bill. The big, nasty bill. The big, sexy bill. The big, gross bill. The big, disgraceful bill. I don't know. They got all kind of nicknames. You know, and this is what Rand Paul has said.
Once this bill votes and this debt ceiling goes through, the debt is owned by the GOP, and there is no more campaigning and saying this is the Democrats. It will be owned by the Republicans, and I think that's a huge mistake.
And Rand Paul says it's a huge mistake, family. And you have some top hitters against President Trump, top Republicans. This thing is getting spicy, and July 4th is coming up, and they want this thing to go get down and shaky. And disgraceful Chuck Schumer, you know, had him a meat pie and went home, and before he left, he said, we read this bill out loud. You know, what do you think of the big, beautiful bill? Let me know in the comment section down below. But we got some big things to get into in today's show. But we seen this come up from Explain America, and it's, oh boy.
Blocked the bill and trashed the president's staff in a fiery tirade. Now, he's finished. But before we get into this story, please common sense just became the latest casualty of the MAGA revolution. And his departure is sending shockwaves through Washington, D.C. Now, North Carolina Senator has announced that he will not seek re-election in 2026. The news dropped just days after Tillis voted against opening debate on Trump's signature Big Beautiful Bill and told colleagues he would oppose the final version altogether. The backlash was immediate. President Trump called him out by name, warning him that he would meet with his challengers and support primarying him in his opposition. Behind the scenes, GOP strategists were already panicking about Tillis' sinking support with both moderates and the Republican base. Now they won't have to, because Tillis will be gone, but not quietly. In a stunning post-retirement meltdown, the two-term senator accused Trump's White House of being run by amateurs, slammed the bill, and especially for its Medicaid reforms, and even twisted Trump's own words to justify his vote against the legislation. Now watch him in his complete meltdown. It's really pathetic, but it's worth a watch.
On health care and betraying a promise. It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste.
And we just showed this.
Fraud and abuse on any programs. Now, those amateurs that are advising him, not Dr. Oz, I'm talking about White House healthcare experts, refuse to tell him that those instructions that were to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, all of a sudden eliminates a government program that's called the provider tax. We have morphed a legal construct that admittedly has been abused and should be eliminated into waste, fraud, and abuse.
The irony? Tillis claimed to be fighting fraud by defending the very loopholes the Trump bill was designed to close. Let's be clear, this is not a loss for Trump or the America First movement. It's a purge. Tillis spent years touting bipartisanship and compromise while the country burned under Democrat rule. He went soft on immigration, spending, and finally, when it mattered most, he sided with the swamp over the will of the voters.
The swamp!
Now he'll be gone.
And we want the swamp drained.
The 2026 race for his seat is already heating up. Among the top contenders, former RNC Vice Chair Lara Trump, who insiders say would have the right of first refusal if she chose to run. Now, Axios said she'd have a hard time saying no if asked by her father-in-law. Also in the mix is RNC Chair Michael Whatley, who's from North Carolina, and rising GOP stars Reps Tim Moore, Pat Harrigan, and Brad Knott. What does this all mean? It means the Republican Party is undergoing a hostile takeover, one primary at a time. The old guard is failing. The base is done with backstabbers and beltway appeasers. Tillis has tried hard to fight Trump, and he lost. This is Kyle Becker with Explain America. Please like.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. And I want to show y'all what Rand Paul said day before yesterday. Yesterday. He said yesterday. On the floor.
For the big, not so beautiful bill, I've asked a very specific question. Will the deficit be more or less next year? The answer, without question, is this bill will grow the deficit. The federal government has fancy formulas and hundreds of wonky accountants who inform us of their projections over 10 years. But you often can't trust these projections. In an excellent piece written by the Foundation for Economics and Education entitled "The CBO's Projections Are Worse Than Useless," Eric Schuler writes, "Long-term analysis and language is commonplace in U.S. national politics, but it achieves no useful outcome. It confuses far more than it clarifies. It does not provide accurate estimates of long-term results. It does not improve the average voter's understanding of policy effects. And it gives politicians a means to claim they are being fiscally responsible without actually ever exercising any prudence whatsoever. Sometimes the predictions are off because a new Congress is elected and changes the law. Eric Schuler writes that for any projection of a 10-year budget to be accurate, the Congressional Budget Office has to assume that the law won't change for 10 years, even as most of the politicians that make the laws risk being replaced every 2 years, and all of them advocate for changes of one stripe or another. Schuler states that few in Washington will admit Congress has a knack for starting any proposed cuts in the later years, while letting spending run wild in the immediate future. Sometimes these predictions are off by $1 trillion or so because the economy grew more slowly or more quickly than anticipated. Bruce Thompson, a former Senate aide and Assistant Secretary of Treasury, writes, "The Congressional Budget Office miscalculated the deficit last year by $1 trillion. So in deciding whether to vote for any big, monstrous bill, it helps to ask the right question. To me, the most pertinent question is how will the bill affect the deficit in the next year? Currently, our deficit is estimated to be a little under $2 trillion this year. What will happen to the debt in 2026 if this bill passes? Well, using the math most favorable to the supporters of the bill, referred to as the policy baseline, the deficit in 2026 will still be $270 billion more than this year. So even using the math, even using the formulas that the supporters of the bill like, the deficit will grow by $270 billion next year. That's just not good if you profess to be fiscally conservative. Why will the deficit grow next year? Well, even if you argue that the 2017 tax cuts don't need to be counted in the calculation at all, the new tax cuts add up to $234 billion to the debt next year. In addition, The big, not so beautiful bill adds new spending of over $500 billion.
Y'all keep it real with me now with Rand. Y'all, I can already see the comments now. Y'all keep it real with me.
Military, border, agricultural subsidies, etc. That spending is front-loaded and will be spent in the first 4 years of the 10-year window. Legislative spending is one of the few items in the bill that is exact. It isn't estimated. If they say they'll spend $500 billion, they're going to spend $500 billion, all in the first few years. So in order not to add to the deficit, the BBB, the big not so beautiful bill, has to have corresponding spending cuts to counter all the new spending. Unfortunately, the spending cuts are backloaded to the final 5 years of the 10-year window when several tax cuts expire and the spending increases are finished. In addition, elections occur every 2 years and could easily wipe out any perceived savings that might occur in the later years. The only real certainty in this budget drama are the budget years coming in the immediate future. It's the next year or two are the only things that are actually of any certainty. So if we analyze this bill from that perspective, we discover that the bill increases the debt by $500 billion in the first 5 years. This is not the CBO projection that Republicans have not liked. This is the projection they are using, says the debt will add $500 billion in the first 5 years. Now, they say somehow, miraculously, in the last 5 years, it gets to a $500 billion in savings. So it's $1 trillion shift from year 5 to year 10. The CBO scores it differently, not as encouraging, and says it adds over $3 trillion in debt. So which is it? Does this bill save $500 billion over 10, or does it add $3 trillion over 10? The truth is that anybody, that even a person with a magic crystal ball, it's anybody's guess. Which brings us back to maybe we have to judge the effects of the big, not so beautiful bill by looking at what happens to the debt next year. Supporters of the bill admit it adds $270 billion to the debt next year. That's the only thing we know for certain. We don't know what happens in year 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, but we know next year this bill will grow the deficit by $270 billion. In addition, the bill increases the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. What does that mean? That is an admission that they know they aren't controlling the deficit. They know that the ensuing years will add trillions more. So we're adding $2 trillion this year, but they're anticipating, the authors of the bill anticipating adding more than $2 trillion next year. That doesn't sound at all conservative to me, and that's why I'm a no.
What do y'all think of that? Let me know in the comments, man. You know, people are saying all kind of things. If you're going to increase the deficit, what is Doge all about? What a F joke. Thomas Massey says the same thing. Here's the point. Why not vote on every item individually instead of passing massive package deals? These bundle bills have caused more harm than good for the U.S. So credit to Rand Paul for calling this out. It's crazy. Don't vote yes on the bill. Scrap it and get rid of the tax breaks and loopholes. Shout out to Rand Paul. Someone in the GOP is allowed to critique President Trump? What? I tell you, man. Stand your ground, Rand Paul. Don't let Trump intimidate you. I'm just reading y'all what they're saying, you know. But again, that's why I want to show both sides in this video, both point of views, and I want to hear back from you guys. You know, and y'all know how we feel about this, about that, how about this bill. We've made tons of videos, man. We've been bringing some of the best updates, you know, and we're rooting for America First, the America First agenda, the common sense agenda. We're rooting for President Trump's instincts, that he has our best interest in heart, and he has been right about a lot of things. But and we're not going to discredit Rand Paul and many others. They have been right about things, and Rand Paul's been right about a lot of things, you know. And I know some people might say he's this, he's that, rhino, this, but you know, it's good for us to come on here and have a healthy conversation. But it's rocking down there in DC. And July 4th is coming up very, very fast. So we'll see how this thing plays out. I love y'all. God bless you all and your family. If you're new here, join the family. Hit that subscribe button. We're rocking and rolling, you guys. And I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace and love, you guys.